Thanks very much, and thank you, Senator Schumer, for your leadership on this issue and on so many of the issues. I'm joined here today by not Will Smith, but Sunil Daluvoy at the one of the leading location analytics companies that the senator was talking about, Euclid Analytics, and I'm joined by Adam Towvim at JumpTap, one of the leading mobile ad networks. JumpTap is in the midst of being acquired by Millennial Media, and therefore becoming one of the real powerhouses of mobile advertising out there, with as, I guess, big a reach now as Google in the combined universe. Is that true, Adam?
Yeah, Google has 30% market share. When the transaction closes, it'll be 29%.
All right, so we've got some real competition. And so here's what we're going to try to do. Both of these guys are at companies that have been privacy leaders. They're in a space where the technologies are relatively new. Some of you are on the bleeding edge. These guys are at companies that have been out a couple of years, but in the big picture world of the media or Washington, these are still new technologies. How the data works, do consumers understand what's happening? And so they both are in segments that have been in the spotlight when it's come to the media. Who's tracking me on my phone, or who's tracking me because of my phone as I walk around retail? And here's what I worry about. Future Privacy Forum is an industry-supported think tank. Half of my board are the chief privacy officers of 70 or 80 companies, from the Google, Microsoft, Yahoos, to companies like these, to everything in between. But the other half are advocates and academics. And so we try to be, I think, like Senator Schumer, the centrists. How do you make sure the technology can be used in ways that are business productive, that are valuable for consumers? But how do you legitimately look at the concerns and say, you know what, I get it. It's not just creepy, there could be some bad things that happen. How do we make sure that the good things happen and that we minimize the risk of those bad things? And so the question that I'm going to ask them is one that I've been asking myself. For the past 10 years or 12 years or so, we've all been watching the policy debate online play out, right? Online advertising, behavioral tracking, retargeting, appending third-party data. The system has gotten more and more complicated. Data is being used online, ad exchanges, data exchanges. It's become a very sophisticated and complicated world, and clearly it's succeeded, right? People are making a lot of money, new businesses and new business models have been built. But it's also been an industry under siege. There are media stories every day. There are senators pointing at, you know, the biggest consumer brands and saying, how dare you be tracking people in this way? There is litigation. There are tech platforms that are responding by blocking cookies. There are consumers that are responding by using software to better control their experience. We haven't lost. People are succeeding, but there's this stress that's been on the industry. There's almost a digital battle going on now with do not track, with cookie blocking, with Apple pulling back, you know, its device identifier so that third-party apps couldn't use it, and then luckily replacing it with something else. There's been privacy stress. Are we going to learn in these new areas, in the mobile advertising world, in the retail location analytics world, are we going to go through 10 years now of, did you know they could do that? Did you know that this creepy thing is happening? Did you know that the government might go get that data? As we've had online, and we'll suffer through it, and we'll succeed, but we'll be carrying this sort of, you know, monkey in our backs. Or is mobile different? We've always said mobile's different, right? It's personal, it's in your pocket. You all know why mobile is so important. Is mobile gonna manage to be smarter, or at least learn from the lessons? Is, now that we're making the jump to, you know, the Internet of Things, we're making the jump to physical, real world tracking, are these leading companies, are the industry players going to repeat the mistakes of the past, or are we gonna do better? Let me ask Adam first, because I think mobile advertising has been around a little bit longer than the retail analytics world, and you're probably a little more along. You've got industry standards that are developing, but you also have digital fingerprinting, you've got do not track. How is this going to play out for you?
Well, just by way of background, for those that are not aware, JumpTap is an independent mobile ad platform, and as Jules mentioned, we've announced that we are going to be, our intention to be acquired by Millennial Media, also an independent platform. So I think I bring a good perspective, but also recognize it comes from the perspective of an independent platform. And JumpTap was the first player in the mobile ad ecosystem to go out and build a lot of the sophisticated data targeting at scale. We brought in offline data from the data brokers, such as Datalogix, what was then Targus Info, Axiom, and Polk for auto data. And so from very early on, we were focused on building privacy standards for the mobile industry, and they really weren't around. I personally helped set up the DA's Mobile Advisory Committee. Jules obviously has done a lot of great work through the Future Privacy Forum. And Jules, I think to answer your question at a high level, even though we've come a long way since 2009, when people first started getting serious about putting the standards together, even though we've come a long way, we still have a lot further to go. You mentioned device fingerprinting. It's still not settled as to how people are using that. For those who aren't aware, creating a device fingerprint is using a combination of statistical, behavioral, or other identifiers that come from the device itself. It could be from a browser, and it could be from a smartphone. It could be pulling from IP address. And the idea is to build a cross-device profile that persists. And from our perspective, we want to make sure two things. We want to make sure that there's a clear value exchange for the user, and that in doing so, we are giving them clear notice and choice about the information that's being used. Clear notice, they know what's going on, and that's hard to do on a screen this size. And then choice, so there's a clear opt-out. We were the first ones to make it possible to opt out on mobile web and mobile device. And so, from our perspective, we want to make sure that we balance that user-centric view of things, but we're also very focused on building that same unified audience across both PC and mobile. I think we're over 50 million monthly active users that we see on both platforms now, and that's incredibly important to you as marketers out there, because we've seen a 160% increase year over year on people who start a task on one platform, such as PC, and finish it on either a tablet or a smartphone. We're now over 50% of a user base of our platform that is actually doing just that. And so being able to reach folks with both precision and with scale is incredibly important. So we try to balance that out as best as possible. But I think there's still a long way to go. But it's clear marketers are clamoring for this, because I think they're becoming more sophisticated. A few years ago, it was just an obsession with the device and what new things could you do with the mobile device. Now it's really thinking about the user and making sure that you're reaching your audience. And if they're seeing and interacting with your content and you're connecting with your audience on the PC side, then the ability to also reach them on the mobile side, measure the conversion on the mobile side, vice versa. That's really what is important to the marketers we work with.
Well, Sunil, are retailers, physical retailers, going to get it? I mean, Adam, on the mobile side, JumpTap's been quick to implement opt-outs, to implement the DAA icon. JumpTap even responds to the do not track header when it's sent, even though most of the industry is still debating, can we ignore do not track? There's not an official set of rules yet, and when I first raised it with you guys, you're like, fine, whatever. People want to get out, we don't want them in, as long as most people are in, because that's important. But let's give the people who do, think that the NSA is going to get their data a chance to do something to get out. Are retailers going to get it? Retailers want to compete with Amazon, obviously, and for a lot of them that means knowing more about users and knowing how they move around the physical space, just like online knows how folks navigate. But Amazon does something really interesting, and you don't even have to read their privacy policy to know what they do. They track you and sell you stuff based on what they know about you and what they know about everybody, and they're kind of proud of it. It says, here's what we think you like based on what you know, what everyone knows. Here's what people like you bought. And nobody says, oh, that's a privacy statement, I ought to read more. It's like, yeah, it's a feature. Data is a feature. Are retailers going to succeed in using data in a way that consumers see as useful? Will they be the Amazons of the world? Or will they be the third party, I don't know who's tracking me in the background, maybe it's for me, maybe it's privacy, maybe they're against me, are they going to charge me a higher price? I don't really know, I better clear my cookies. Where is it going to play out?
Jules, first of all, I want to thank the folks at Street Fight Summit for the opportunity to speak here. I work for a company called Euclid Analytics, as Jules mentioned, and we basically use the Wi-Fi signals in these smartphones to understand the movement of flow of people in their physical environments, and we're focused squarely on retail. And unfortunately, the short answer to your question is it's much more mixed or nuanced. I would say that the retailers have a huge opportunity now to really understand their customers using these types of new technology and tools that have been available for online companies for a long period of time. So understanding the number of people who walk by their stores, of that, how many people respond to their window displays and walk in their stores, and then how long do they stay in their stores, and how often do they repeat. Those are the top line kind of metrics we provide retailers, and to give them some idea of how their marketing materials are performing. Now, we don't know who the people are. We collect only non-personal identifiable information. We hash the MAC address, we collect it, and when we present the data to their customers or retailers, it's pretty anonymized. So the retailers are now in a position to get the same type of tools that the online community have had to really build a better experience. And there are certain categories like music, video, and books that have gone online and are not going to go back offline. But we think in the case of other types of categories, like especially retail, other types of electronics, you could actually do a pretty good job having a physical presence, and the brick and mortar do have a chance against the online companies if they deliver a better experience, and we think we're just one of those tools in delivering that experience. With your question regarding, are we going to simply repeat the debates that happen online in the offline world? I think there's some similarities and differences. The similarities are that you'll never be done with the debate. There's always going to be an ongoing boundaries where people are going to push, the marketers are going to push, and they're going to be privacy advocates that are going to question and challenge that. So I think you'll see that back and forth occur in the offline world. But also I think what you see in the online world, they've done a really good job of showing the consumer benefit. So even if most people don't understand what a cookie is, or that someone may be tracking them, the benefit that they get from using a free Google service, a free Facebook service, that are subsidized by advertising, is something that they're able to make that exchange for giving up some of their privacy. They may not fully understand what they're giving up, but they're willing to at least make that trade-off, the quid pro quo. And so those are the kind of things I think we can learn in the offline world of providing that, understanding that benefit. But the big difference in the offline world is that it's much more personal. When you're at home by yourself, surfing for whatever purchase you want to make, it's very different than when you're walking into the store. If you had someone follow you on the store, it'd be kind of creepy, as Senator Schumer said. So we're very aware that we have a bigger obligation, a greater obligation to educate our customers, the retailers, to educate their end users what exactly is happening, what we're doing and what we're not doing. I think that's a much more important burden that we have on us at the get-go than perhaps the online people didn't necessarily have.
So, as I look around the room, I see a lot of new companies, startups, companies that are, aren't the global dominant tech brands. And so, when you heard Senator Schumer talk, you might have said, sure, big deals with senators and the FTC and like industry standards. I'm building my business. I don't got a team of like lawyers to negotiate things. I'm the little guy. I'll do the right thing, but I don't have time for that. Let Google solve that problem, right? You heard that on Tuesday what he announced and what the FTC supported and what a number of the companies, Glenn Tinley from Mexia is here, they joined onto this code. Fairly young companies. Why were they the ones in the lead, hammering this out and coming to agreement? Why wasn't this like all the big trade groups? And let me just tell you, that's the way it has played out. in the tech world in the last years. The trade groups, they're slow. They need everybody on board. They can't do things that 70% of their members think is a good idea, because then 30% are saying, hey, I can't get there. Well, then they don't get there. But when 70 or 80% of us know, like, here's the right way, this is the right thing to do, we should do it, we ought to do that. That's really hard for, consensus, or it's really hard for a lot of the big players who've built their technology. They've spent hundreds of millions of dollars, they got architecture, you tell them they got to add an opt-out, talk to one of you, talk to these guys, yeah, fine, we'll push it in the next build, no problem. You want to switch, we'll put it in there. You say that to a company with, all kinds of global architecture, it is, oh God, that's going to be like millions and millions. We'll put it in, version 6.0, and it's behind 85 other features that our, business team has promised to hit, certain revenue targets by Q1. And so what you saw here was something really interesting. You saw a young, industry which has been getting flack in the news, right? People have said, oh my God, who's tracking us in stores? This has been an issue. There's been a media overhang. There have been retailers who've said, look, I want to do this, but I don't want to be, criticized. I don't want to be sued, so I want to do this, but, I'll do it when the problem goes away. I'm a conservative brand. By moving quickly, and frankly, doing some of the things that a lot of these guys were already doing, by making those best practices clear, building on them, making it a commitment that all the leading companies were going to do, you had a story which was sort of a negative, who's tracking and isn't it bad, and gotcha, we've just exposed these companies, to the FTC and a senator saying, look, this is a technology that can and is being used in a positive way. Let's just make sure that we have the privacy rules in place to make sure that, we're doing it the right way. So let me throw this one out. Both of my panelists here said, well, what I do isn't personal. I don't have your name, I don't have your email. Both of you make commitments that you do your business in a way that isn't personal. Then why are we bothering? Why are we giving choices? Why is there a privacy issue? Does it really matter whether it's personal or not? Do you still have some obligation, perhaps, when what you're doing is tracking a phone, tracking some data, to put the privacy rules around it?
Hey, Jules. I think it's more than an obligation. I obviously agree with you. We do have an obligation there because, we've always focused on putting the user's trust front and center. But I think there's even a business argument for it there as well. If that value exchange isn't properly in balance, if you're getting lots of targeting data, none of it personally identifiable, but lots of targeting data, and everybody's had this experience if they go to Zappos or eBags, right? You go, you look at your piece of Tumi luggage, you look at a pair of shoes, and you go off to Yahoo or some other consumer experience online, and one of the first things you see is some very aggressive retargeting. And there's a reason why you see it there. It's because it works, keeps you coming back. But it can also turn you off down the road if it's not properly balanced. And a great example is just layering in other pieces of targeting information in there so that you can give something to the user that's valuable to them, but also gives them the specific content that you know is going to give them a call to action. If it does become creepy, as Sunil was saying before, I think that's where they would stop coming into stores. They would stop going to eBags. So you've got to sort of balance it out there. There's a business reason, but obviously there's a clear obligation we have to the users.
And just to reiterate that, I don't think most people even use the term PII. Most normal people would even understand what that term meant. But at the same time, people just don't want to be, they don't want to be left in the dark. They may attribute nefarious intent behind it. If this giving people the notice and the ability to this is occurring, that knowledge itself is just a great way to build that trust and that relationship with your customers. So I think it's very important at least to provide that, whether it's PII or not, it does raise a level of burden on the companies and how they treat the data, how securely do they hold that data, and other types of opt-in or opt-out mechanisms you provide. I think those are all the standards we try to hold ourselves to. But I think when we're dealing with our customers, our retailers, they have a personal relationship with their end customers, the buyers. And if they feel like they're being snooped or they're being watched in a weird way, I think that they wouldn't go back to those stores. I think most people accept the fact there's video cameras in stores that provides a certain value and service. And I think when they initially came out, it must have been a little strange. I think there is an educational level that has to occur that this is done for a particular reason. We haven't done a good enough job doing this. What does this mean? Less smaller lines, better pricing, better store layout, a better overall shopping experience. I think we can get to that point of why we're doing this, not just for data's sake, but actually improve your experience when you walk into that store. I think the acceptance would be much greater.
So clearly, as more data is used and more targeting, more efficient analysis, we're at a path where either it could feel more and more creepy. How do they know that about me? Or it could feel more and more personalized and tailored and customized in a way that's positive. I go into a store, the guy knows me, knows my size, says, hey, I even put this extra pair away for you because I know you always like this sort of thing. I'm a customer for life, right? That's my personal relationship. But at the same time, we all read the story of Target getting a lot of grief because they sent a promotion that indicated that they knew that this woman was pregnant. Her father got all upset, called up, got angry, and then apologized because it turned out that she was, and the Target algorithm knew to send her appropriate pregnancy-related items because of her shopping history.
Right,
and
but I think that's a great example of where it's not just about the targeting first and foremost, it's also about, could they have just peppered in a few other things that might have been interesting to someone of that age demographic. And, oh, by the way, there's also, these pregnancy-related, well, it sort of diffuses some of the creepy, and I think in the end it can also give more value to them.
Well, so Adam's suggestion is one way to not be creepy is to not, walk up to someone and let them know that, you happen to know something. You looked up their house, before you came to the conference and you're amazed that they spent, 1.2 million on that house. Well, you don't bring it up. Can we also perhaps lean into it, with apologies to Mrs. Sandberg, can we lean into it? How can we really give you that really personalized experience in a way that is, yeah, they know me. Google and Microsoft and Yahoo and a number of the ad folks have started letting people see their profile, let them see their web surfing history. And the early statistics show that the people who go there don't opt out and clear it out. They adjust it because they think it's wrong and they want it to be right. And Axiom just launched an effort after some pressure and call from the FTC to let you see the data as a consumer that Axiom has about you. And what I'm hearing as well is that the people who are going there aren't rushing to opt out. They're like, that's wrong. Why do they think I'm this? That's not accurate. And so it seems like we want to be known, but we want to be known right, and we just want to make sure that no one's taking advantage of us. And that's not really privacy, is it? It's probably control and brand and relationship. Sunil, what do you think?
I think history is somewhat useful here. When the U.S. Postal Service issued zip codes, people thought was creepy. When the AT&T issued area codes, people thought it was a little creepy because they now know where you live. Before those were operational tools that the companies decided to distribute because it was useful. But during each of those times, you look back at it, even when the mobile carriers issued caller ID, people thought it was creepy or unusual. So if you look at the privacy outcry during those periods of time, it's also instructful that we come a long way from like blocking our telephone number to now, if we ever get a blocked number, we'd never answer it. So it's just it does take some time for consumer awareness to occur. But even then, there are certain behaviors or etiquettes that will always be creepy, whether it's in the 1800s or today. I think that where that line is drawn, I'm not necessarily certain, but I think part of it is what is our expectation? What is our expectation of privacy? And it varies in different environments. Even within the retail environment itself, our expectation of privacy in a clothing shop is different than going to an auto parts store. So I think it's a little more nuanced and broadly characterizing it across all these different areas.
We're going to open for questions. This is your chance to ask me or the panelists how you can avoid the privacy pitfalls or the challenges that you see. Please just raise your hand. I see somebody in the front. Say who you are.
JD Story. Adam, you mentioned that you had an opt-out button on your app. What percentage of the people are opting out?
So to be clear, we have an opt-out capability that you can access via your mobile phone, and then it's by coming to our website, and you can opt out of mobile web browsing, and you can opt out of the mobile targeting on the mobile web. You're still going to get ads. They're just going to be less relevant now. And then you can also opt out by providing your device identifier. Another way of doing it is we partnered with Evidon, and you can download an Evidon app. And via that, you can opt out of the targeting capabilities. And so, we've found that to be extremely helpful in explaining to people how they're able to make the choice, in giving our partners a vehicle for making that choice. And we will see, 171 million unique users just in the US in 1 month alone. And the number of opt-outs is minuscule. You wouldn't even necessarily be able to measure it. Now, 10 to 15 years from now, I think the desktop world would tell us that you'd at least be able to measure it, but it will probably still be small. So long as people are feeling like they have enough value, I think the one thing to think about in mobile versus the desktop in terms of comparisons is the mobile device is a much more personal device. It's always with you, and just like Sunil was saying, you may think of your personal space in a retail store very different than in an auto store. So you can imagine how sensitive it is when you've got a personal device inside, of a personal retail environment. But I think that's where there's also this great opportunity. As long as you're meeting the consumer in that ideal halfway point and there's a clear value exchange, I think, I know that, my young children will be growing up in a world of value exchange that I will, even as a techie, I'll have trouble imagining. I mean, I see the way people who move through their teens and 20s now embrace social networking. It's really something else. But it's always about that balance on the value exchange.
I can tell you that over about 10 years of tracking opt-out rates from when I was Chief Privacy Officer at DoubleClick, maybe 10 or so years ago, they generally have been under 1%. I'd occasionally see a spike, and I'd be like, what happened? And they had like rerun a 60-minute story that said, oh, here's ad targeting, here's how you can opt out. And so then it would spike from 0.5% to 1%. Generally, if what you're doing is of some value and it's not actually interrupting someone's experience, we see high acceptances of the default. But if you're doing something that interrupts somebody, you're calling me at home at night with a telemarketing robocall, well, most of America has put themselves on the do not call list, right? Even some of the marketers in this room probably have themselves on that list, right? When it came to pop-ups, and we all were being hit with pop-ups, and the industry was like, well, no, people must like them because they work. People click on them. We're making money on this, so let's continue doing it, right? And then people started downloading pop-up blockers because it was so intrusive in huge numbers. And then finally, the browsers stepped in. So what I argue to the tech folks is, if you're worried about people like, running away with an opt-out, or you're worried about Congress, don't worry. Congress says they can't do the budget. They're not going to regulate your technology. Here's what's going to happen. If what you do is considered intrusive, the platforms, the browsers, the phone, right? The browsers solved, more or less, the pop-up problem because it was becoming a pain in everyone's neck. Apple said, ew, we're being hassled over this device ID that we're letting apps use. That wasn't really our plan. We'd like apps to make some money, but this wasn't exactly what we thought of, so yank, we'll take it back. And today, Mozilla is getting ready to roll out third-party cookie blocking because their user audience, their audience has sort of said, something wrong. So we're in the tech business. We sometimes worry about Congress getting in our way. I worry about consumers driving technology to solve what they perceive as a problem. So you don't want to be a problem for consumers in our world because someone, either some viral software that they're going to spread or some message they all spread via Facebook or the browser or the mobile operating system will solve it for you. That's why we got to be consumer friendly for our own benefit because someone will stop us, probably the consumer. Sunil, you want to add on that?
I think we see really low opt-out rates as well, but partly because today our mechanism has been Euclid specific, and part of the idea of doing this industry-wide thing is to make that available and easier to opt out and giving much more flexibility when the retailers to do it. But the sample set we have, you can build a very healthy business around if you look at what we're talking about.
We have one more question. Some of us are running for a train, but we could squeeze in one more, and we look like we're good. So I thank you, Sunil. I thank you, Adam, for joining me, and appreciate you all for your interest and attention, and to the folks at Street Fight. Thank you.
Thank you.